Welcome to The Explainer. For the longest time, the conversation around the climate crisis has been all about what we have to give up. But what if that's the wrong way to look at it? Today, we're diving into a totally different story, one that flips the script from cost and sacrifice to one of huge economic opportunity.
Okay, before we get into the new story, we've got to ground ourselves in the reality of where we are right now. The science is crystal clear. We're up against a ticking clock, and it's that urgency, that sense of a deadline, that makes finding the right narrative more critical than ever.
So let's start with a picture that, honestly, we've all seen before. And it's unsettling, right? For decades, images just like this one have been the face of the climate story. They show these massive, fast-paced changes happening to our planet.
And this quote really sets the stage. It tells us point blank that this isn't some far-off problem for our grandkids anymore. No way. The science has basically handed us a non-negotiable deadline. What we do in the next few years, it's everything. It's absolutely critical.
This chart right here, it's basically the story of how we ended up in this critical moment. I mean, just look at that sharp spike in temperatures. It's so clear. We're already living in a world that's about 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer than it used to be. And you see those different colored paths for the future? Well, that's the choice in front of us. Our future literally depends on which path we decide to take starting today.
So what's really at stake here? Well, if we just keep doing what we're doing, scientists are warning we're on track for 3 degrees of warming. And the source material is incredibly blunt about what that means. They call it potentially civilization-ending bad. Let that sink in. It's a really stark reminder of just how high the stakes are if we fail to act. Okay, so if the stakes are that high, why has it been so hard to make progress? Well, for a long time, the whole conversation has been stuck in one particular story. And honestly, it's a pretty discouraging one that you've probably heard a million times. And here it is, the old narrative. The idea that tackling climate change is a trade-off. That to save the planet, we have to torpedo our economy. It's been pitched as this impossible choice, right? You either get prosperity or you get a healthy planet, but you can't have both. And that idea, that false choice, has been a massive roadblock for years.
And let's be real, the old way of doing things, the economic model that got us into this mess, was just dirty and destructive by design. It caused so much harm, and not just to the climate. Think about the damage to people's health, to entire ecosystems. This image of a scorched earth really kind of says it all, doesn't it?
But what if that story is just wrong? What if that whole frame, that whole idea of sacrifice and trade-offs is just completely outdated? And that's where things get really interesting, because this leads us to a completely different story, a new narrative where we stop just talking about managing a crisis and start talking about grabbing a once-in-a-generation opportunity. So check this out. Economist Nicholas Stern puts it this way. Everything we need to do to fix the climate crisis, that's actually the biggest economic opportunity of our lifetime. I mean, think about that. It completely flips the whole problem on its head. And that right there is the core idea. The new growth story says that building a clean, sustainable world isn't putting the brakes on the economy, it's stepping on the gas. It becomes the engine for everything. We're talking about building a richer, smarter, and stronger world, not just dodging a bullet. So you might be asking, what makes this possible now? Well, one word, technology. The changes have been absolutely remarkable. The source material points out that the cost of solar power, for instance, has dropped by more than 90% in just the last 10 years. That's incredible. So clean solutions aren't some expensive niche thing anymore. A lot of the time, they're now the cheapest, smartest economic choice you can make.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the actual mechanics here? How does taking climate action actually create economic growth? Let's break it down.
And the first thing to get is that this isn't about making a few small tweaks here and there. Not at all. We're talking about a massive, fundamental overhaul of, well, pretty much everything. Rebuilding our entire energy system, redesigning our cities, transforming our industries from the ground up.
And this is the really cool part. These three things, innovation, efficiency, and investment, they all feed each other. It's like a powerful feedback loop. You pour in massive investment, right? That sparks rapid innovation in clean tech. That innovation makes things way more efficient, which then opens up even more opportunities for new investments. It's a cycle that just keeps building on itself, creating this incredible new engine for growth.
And get this new model isn't just about creating new growth. It's also about protecting the growth we already have. When we build a more resilient society and get off fossil fuels, we avoid the huge and growing costs of doing nothing. The costs from things like the extreme weather events you see here. It's pretty simple, really. A stable climate is the only foundation for a truly stable economy.
So all of this brings us to a really clear, really unavoidable choice. The science has shown us what's at stake. And now the economics are showing us that there are two totally different paths forward, two different futures we can build.
And here's a super important point. Doing nothing is a choice. It's not some neutral, safe option. In fact, the source material argues it's the most radical, the most dangerous choice we could possibly make. It's actively choosing a path that leads to disaster.
So when you boil it all down, we've got two potential stories for our century laid out right in front of us. Path number one, we stick with the old, dirty, destructive way of doing things that we know leads towards catastrophe. Or path number two, we grab this new opportunity for a sustainable, resilient, and much more inclusive world.
And in the end, the message from the source material is surprisingly optimistic. The challenge isn't that we don't have the answers. It's not about the economics anymore. The tech is here. The business case is strong. The real question, the only question left, is which story we're going to choose to write, the story of growth or the story of catastrophe. It's up to us.